Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Welcome in, everybody. It is Sports Daily. It is KFH. I'm Jacob Albracht alongside Tommy Castor. Jad Chambers producing as we get things going for another week. Well, in the late summer, early fall, school's back in session. We're inching our way to the football season, both in high school. I say both, all in high school, college, and the NFL. Can't wait for that. We make our way through the second preseason games, probably the most meaningful, but not in every situation. It's definitely not a roadmap anymore that everybody follows. Everybody a little bit different, but certainly for the Kansas City Chiefs, which we'll get into throughout the show today. Got some giveaways for you. We'll give away some vouchers for the Wichita Wind Surge. We'll give away some HTO iced tea and coffee. Glad to be here with you. Glad to be able to do that. The IHOP hotline will be your place to win those prizes. 869-1240. Thanks for watching us on our video streams, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Glad to be here. Tommy, how are you?
I'm good, man. It's hot out there. I think I maybe left my house one time this weekend, and that was to go get some food. But other than that, man, it was stay inside. I stayed in the basement because it's usually a lot cooler in the basement than anywhere else in the house, and just tried to survive. And we got a few more days of this. So, it's brutal out there.
The AC is not a good time for air conditioners around the area. Our house can't keep up. I told my wife yesterday, I was like, listen, I know you hate this, like living in a dungeon, but I'm going to tell you for the next week, all the blinds are getting shut. Like everything, we're locking it down. Like nothing but darkness in this house because it was hot yesterday. We got back from, I don't even know where we were. And I was like, that doesn't feel right. And it's just like, it's blowing cold air, but it can't keep up. And I mean, if you step outside, you get it. I was at the pool 2 different times, 2 different pools, just like anywhere, any water was involved. We ended up there over the weekend. It still wasn't enough. It's just hang in there, everybody. We'll give you a chance to stay refreshed with some iced tea and coffee a little later in the show. Thank goodness, it's not that way like at training camps for these teams now in the NFL. Could you imagine if they were outside in St. Joe? And I don't know what the temperature is up there, but I mean, it gets to the point when it's like this where you're like, meh, I guess it's worth it. Probably not. But I think for the most part, everybody's now back in their air-conditioned facilities.
Yeah, and I think I read a couple of articles that, there are different, high schools or, different areas around the state where they're limiting the practice times and all of that just because of how hot it is outside. So, I mean, definitely, whether or not you're practicing sports or you're working or whatever you're doing, just take it easy and be safe when you're outside.
Just drink lots of water. I mean, that's a big thing. Just keep hydrated and then things will take care of themselves. It was a preseason weekend. I watched maybe a little more than I did last weekend, but I still can't get myself to just sit and lock in. I kind of just watch highlights and stuff like that, check all the box sheets and everything. I've never been able to just even the teams I love or the teams I can't just make myself, I don't know what it is. Watched plenty of the Chiefs. I got through the starters, around the league, looking for rookie quarterbacks. There's some curious situations around football, but let's start with the Chiefs, Tommy. Chris Jones still. They are done in St. Joe, though, so this becomes the time where it's sort of just like, when does he show up? Because we think that he will. I don't think he'll show up with a new contract, but I do think he'll show up to practice. But the Chiefs, they just keep going business as usual. I think the defense looked fine, but, Kyler Murray didn't play, so I don't really care about the defense too much. Not that Kyler Murray's going to play right now. Obviously, he's hurt, but I just mean like, is that Arizona's number one offense out there? I suppose, but the offense, I think we can take stuff from, and it just looked efficient all the way through. And I think it sort of emphasizes what we kind of suspect this year. Last year, all the attention was on what do you do without Tyreek Hill? They changed things clearly. Well, now I think they take that new, style and philosophy, but infuse it with a little more talent in the pass catching group. And I think this is the kind Arizona's, and again, this is what makes the preseason so frustrating for me. Like Arizona's defense in their preseason opener looked really good. So were we getting that here? Like how much do we take from it? But I think you just have to break it apart. The offensive line looked good. Looks like it's going to be good. It's such a dynamic group of pass catchers, and they don't even have maybe their most dynamic pass catcher out there right now in Kadarius Toney. I've thought this for a while, and I continue to think like this has a chance for Mahomes because I think he'll spread the ball around. But just like statistically, I think he's going to flirt around with one of his best statistical years this year.
Yeah, I think two major takeaways, and you touched on both of them from the preseason game over the weekend. Number one, yeah, the wide receiver room is super deep, and I joked around over the weekend like, the Chiefs are going to carry like 47 wide receivers on their roster this season. I mean, they've got a ton of wide receivers, and just guys that can make plays. Rashee Rice had an early drop and then just took over. I mean, like got it out of his mind and caught for almost 100 receiving yards in that preseason game. So he looked really good. Justin Ross had a couple of really nice plays, really nice catches. Smith Marset is somebody that is probably not going to be able to make the roster in Kansas City, but he'll make somebody's roster, I would imagine. He was actually Pro Football Focus's top receiver in the preseason for this last week of games. So, I mean, they've got a ton of talent at the wide receiver position this year and super, super deep. And there's going to be some difficult decisions there. The other takeaway, and you touched on it, the offensive line looked really good. Patrick Mahomes has not been touched in the first two preseason games, which is obviously good. You don't want him to get hit, even though he might want to get hit. You don't want him to get hit. But they've just looked incredibly dominant. And that offensive line obviously has been rebuilt, and you've got the tackle positions that are new in Donovan Smith and Juwan Taylor. But man, they gave Mahomes and then Gabbert and Bouchel gave them a ton of time in the pocket to be able to make things happen. And so if that can continue for the rest of the preseason and into the regular season, I like their chances just because of how talented and effective that offensive line has been.
Yeah, I mean, the offensive line is everything in an offense like this, right? It is the most, and it ties back to Chris Jones, right? Like the offensive line is becoming, and maybe it always has been, the most critical piece to the offense outside of Mahomes, right? Like I think, and it's hard because Tyreek Hill is so unbelievably talented and good, but like I think it's and I don't know how you rank Kelsey in this either, but he's sort of a part of the offensive line, I guess, but he's also a pass because he's kind of he kind of does both. The offensive line is the most important thing to the offense. I mean, I think we're seeing that. We saw it last year, quite frankly. Like that was not a great group of pass catchers. I mean, we talked about that a lot. That's why we thought Sky Moore might take off. He didn't, and they were still fine. But like, I'd never heard of Ty Freifogel and Amir Smith-Marset. I maybe have heard of Smith-Marset, maybe, but like a third-year player out of Iowa, I don't think I have. And it's like, and look, again, that's why the preseason frustrates me. They're backups, in with backups, playing back. Like, I don't know what to make of any of it. But I think the design of this new offense, and all three quarterbacks, by the way, had success in it. I guess all four quarterbacks had success in it. They're just, it is going to be a place where you can sort of just rotate guys in. And I think that's what makes it's so appealing this year is because you have that dynamic, which is the same dynamic we saw last year. Like, we'll figure it out. Doesn't matter who's catching. We'll figure out a way to get them open. But now you do have a talented group in there, like that can run after the catch kind of guys. And what does that mean? Like, it'll be, I really, like, I just keep thinking about it, Tommy. It's like, this is going to be the same thing we saw last year, but these guys are way more talented after they catch the football collectively. And Andy Reid, there's just inherently, if Mahomes gets the time, there's going to be space for these guys to run after the ball. So whether it's Tony or Moore or Rice, Kelsey's always going to get his catches. He's not necessarily at this point in his career like run after the catch guy, but like all these guys just become weapons in space. I think their offense is going to be as dynamic as it ever has been. And that's what we're seeing in the preseason. It could just be the preseason. Look, I get it, but I don't think it is, because we've thought about this for a while now, that this, with Tony, if he's healthy, it's just like the icing on the cake of what could be a really difficult offense for opposing teams to stop if they can't get pressure on Mahomes. And not only do you have an offensive line playing great, you have an offense that's designed for Mahomes to not need to be in the pocket for a long time. Like, both of those things are happening. It's like they're neutralizing the pass rush from two different fronts here. And I don't know how teams are going to stop them if you can't get a rush on Mahomes.
Yeah. And of course, like when Kadarius Toney went down with his injury in training camp, my first thought was, man, like there goes probably your number one option. If healthy, the guy that can really make things happen and such a dynamic talent and all of that. And I know, again, it's the preseason and you have to pump the brakes a little bit here, but there are so many other options. And I'm not downplaying Kadarius Toney anymore. And I'm not saying that when healthy, he's not going to be valuable for the team, because I think he will be, but it's less dire, I think. And I don't think it was dire either. I mean, like at all when he went down, but it's less impactful, I think, after watching two preseason games, potentially not having Kadarius Toney, depending on, how long it takes for him to come back from this injury. Because you do have all of these other weapons that, we really hadn't seen a whole lot from. And really the general consensus has always been throughout the offseason and into training camp and now the preseason is they're talented receivers, but they're unproven wide receivers. And so how can they sort of come to the surface with Mahomes and make it all work? And, the one drive that Mahomes was in last week against the Saints wasn't great. They got off to a little bit of a sluggish start. The ones did early on against Arizona. And then they just got into a little bit of a rhythm. And again, like it's one of those things when this team is clicking and getting into the rhythms and getting first downs, and then you add on to that an offensive line that is going to give your quarterback a clean pocket and a significant amount of time to throw. That's really, really hard to stop. We know how effective and dangerous Patrick Mahomes is, even when he doesn't have a clean pocket and when he's on the run and scrambling and all of that. But when he's got a clean pocket and he can, have his reads and be able to go through his progressions and all of that, I think that makes him even more dangerous. And so this is the next evolution, I think, of this offense, with an offensive line that's effective, and then just a really deep pool of wide receivers that can make a lot of different things happen after the catch. It's, I don't want to say it's a different look offense. It is a little bit, but
I think
you still have a lot of the same weapons, just kind of a different way of utilizing them.
I think it's a different look for sure, because I think it was efficient last year. Like, that was like, if I had to describe it would just be really, really efficient, right? I think this offense, the style is the same, but the players on the field make it far more dynamic. Look, let's not pretend they're just picking guys up off the street and plugging them in. They're not. They spent high draft capital on really all three of Rice, Moore, and Tony over the past few years. The trade was for Tony, but it was a third-round pick. Anything in the top 3 rounds is considered, generally high draft capital, and they spent second-round picks on the other two guys. So they've been designing this for a while on what they wanted to do, and they've been investing, the draft capital to make it so. And so, we saw DeAndre Hopkins, and it was like, oh man, he would add this new wrinkle to the offense. And I still think he could have, but I don't, but it just, now that we're seeing it play out, it's like, yeah, but they'll be fine, right? It's really like D-Hop was going to provide that get him ball, and like who becomes that big red zone target. Maybe they don't need it. Maybe it's just Kelsey and we're overthinking it, and everybody else can be designed open, right? I think that we're looking at something here. The NFL is a copycat league. Is there a chance, because we saw everybody at 2 years ago, starting with the Super Bowl loss, we saw the league adjust to Mahomes. We saw what the Buccaneers did. Then every defense in football basically started to do that, after Mahomes dealt with that then for the whole next season. And it was hard on Mahomes. It was hard because that, it totally changes. So then everybody last year and everybody else struggles with a little bit. The Chiefs are a year ahead of that. But it makes me wonder if we start to see this in this copycat league, like as the Chiefs have now spent a couple of years to, okay, how do we adjust to that adjustment? We're probably going to start seeing more of that. And it's interesting. And it's interesting to me too. Like I think about all these really, really great running backs that are also good pass catchers. And I'm like, why is everybody pretending like we need to devalue the most talented players with the ball in their hands? Like running backs are still the most difficult to tackle, right? And like Deuce Vaughn, let's use Deuce Vaughn as an example. So Deuce Vaughn comes in, and Jahmyr Gibbs was drafted this way. And I think the Lions are going to use him this way. I just like, there's such a place for this hybrid sort of looking receiver now. Like how do we just get these guys in space in in an offense that moves quickly, right? And I think we're going to start to see that. I think we're going to start to see some of these, supremely talented players who have been, strangleholded by whatever this running back conundrum is. Like, why not find ways to get those guys the ball out in space? Like, why can't those be slot receivers? Like, these are some of the best athletes. What was always when you played football growing up? Where did the best player play? Always. It was running back, right?
Yeah.
Until you get a little older and kids learn how to throw the ball. Like, it's always running back. These are the best athletes on the field. Let's get them out, move them around. I mean, Sky Moore looks kind of like a running back, right? Like he's built that way. And I think the Chiefs are doing this on purpose. I think it's all going to be like quick and efficient. And you got a couple of guys that'll stretch the field a little bit, but they're going to keep defenses heads on just spinning with the way they're going to run this offense.
And it wasn't that long ago that, Tyreek Hill, when he was on the Chiefs, I mean, they were using him out of the backfield occasionally and, kind of making him that Swiss Army knife. That was kind of the thought of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think, coming out of college, was that he could be a pass catching back. They didn't ever, and I don't think they've really ever lined him up as a slot receiver necessarily, but he can catch the ball out of the backfield. Jerick McKinnon kind of serves in that role as the pass catching back also.
McKinnon could do that. Yeah,
for sure. So I think that there is that opportunity there. And, depending on the team, depending on the talent, you might see that more. But the one thing about Andy Reid is that he doesn't typically shy away from doing things in a clever way. So if there's a guy that he wants on the field and he wants them to get the ball, he's going to find a way to get them on the field and get them the ball. That's the way it's always been. So, there are probably other coaches out there that are probably a little bit more traditional, and if you're a running back, you're a running back, you're a running back. That's just the bottom line. It's a little bit different, I think, in Kansas City. And so, that's why, although the Clyde Edwards-Helaire first round draft pick, I think we can look back on it and say probably not the best pick. I understand the thought process behind it because he could be versatile. Jerick McKinnon is versatile. Sky Moore can be versatile. So there are opportunities there, I think, to expand this offense. And we've seen it through the first two preseason games. Expand the offense from just efficient to efficient and clever. And they kind of had to be just efficient last season because of the lack of really elite pass catchers. They can really open up, I think, the playbook a little bit more this season. You're another season removed from having Tyreek Hill on the team. And so you can do some other really unique things, especially with a really deep wide receiver room.
Well, look, Tyreek Hill is the prototype of what you'd even want in this offense. I mean, that's the crazy thing. Like he's who you'd want if you're going to run this offense. Just who can get open and get in space. That's where he's the most dangerous anyway. I just the pick of Edwards-Helaire was just the wrong pick, but it wasn't the wrong idea. And I don't even think that's as a pass catcher. Let's talk about the backfield, because when we see this and we have massive questions about the defense, and that running back is really, really going to be important to this team, like to help defense, to help whatever, to put away games. That's where Pacheco, and we saw that last year. That's where he was great. Let's talk about the backfield, because we haven't seen him yet. And we've wondered, like, is there enough there if Pacheco isn't out on the field? We'll talk about that when we come back. Sports Daily reacting to the Chiefs. Dominant in a preseason game. Take it with a grain of salt. 869-1240. Your thoughts on the IHOP hotline. Albracht and Castor will be right back.
is 97.5 and 1240 KFH. The commercials are over.
Yo, I haven't got all day.
869-1240.
Time to get busy.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily on KFH. Going back through the Chiefs' second preseason game. The big takeaway, I think, for all of us, O-line looking great, making things, easy on all the quarterbacks. The design of this offense looks great. A lot of dudes caught balls in this game, like in just a ridiculous amount of players catching balls. Some guys, I'll be honest, I've never heard of. The backfield, though, Tommy, is interesting because we're not going to see Pacheco, I don't think, in the preseason, which is the right thing to do. LaMichael Pirine has gotten some run. Deneric Prince was the early story of camp. Talk on him has sort of cooled lately. I don't know if I still think they could use a grinder back there. I don't know that player is just sort of out there anymore. I don't want Kareem Hunt. Leonard Fournette would be interesting, but I don't even know that I think of Leonard Fournette that way anymore. So it's really probably, I think we're going with what we got here. I still think it's going to be difficult for Isaiah Pacheco with his style to hold up for, 17 games here. So it really, to me, becomes how much do they lean on Clyde Edwards-Helaire still? Is it Prince? Surely LaMichael Pirine at this point is going to make this roster, right?
I don't think they're going to go out and get anybody else. I think they're going to stick with the guys that they have. And I think that considering that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is back this season, which that wasn't fully guaranteed, after the Super Bowl win. There was a lot of speculation that he was not going to rejoin the team. The fact that he's back, I think that the Chiefs are going to try to give him more run. Assuming that he's fully healthy, I think he is. I think it's one of those things where they know that they've invested quite a bit in him and used a pretty significant amount of draft capital to bring him in. So I think that they're going to lean on him more. Of course, Pacheco, if healthy, they'd like him to be the bell cow. McKinnon is the Swiss Army knife, the change of pace kind of guy. And I don't mind Michael Pirine. I'm not sure that he's going to be a guy that can be, an impact running back in the National Football League. But I think that if he, I'm not going to say that I'm convinced he's going to make the roster, but if he does, I think he could get a little bit of run there. I'm most surprised about Deneric Prince. I thought that he was going to be a lock to make the roster for special teams, especially. And I thought, okay, if he can make the team, be the special teams guy, be the kick returner, and then get, maybe some backup action or whatever running the football, he could carve out a pretty nice role on this offense. I don't know if that's going to happen because, to your point, I think the talk on him has cooled off a little bit. We didn't really see him as the primary returner over the weekend against the Cardinals. That really belonged to Richie James. So that was different from the first preseason game to now. So I'm not sure what their plan is long-term for him, if he's going to be a guy that can make the 53-man roster or if he's more of a practice squad guy this season. I'm most surprised about him. And I think he has cooled off a little bit, at least the talk on him over the last week or so.
You mean the talk on Prince, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they've got to keep him. He's got a pretty high pedigree, coming back through. I think they like him. He was insanely effective in college. I think the thing for me is, like, you got to have them. And I don't know where they're going to, this is so in the weeds because it'll be fine. Like, I don't know where they're going to, tuck away some of these players, because they certainly will want to keep Richie James. I think at this point, McKinnon is such a, McKinnon's role is probably the hardest to figure and like pencil in. Because if I'm them, I'm using McKinnon almost exclusively as just like a weapon, not as a running back early in the year. Because if you do need to, I think in a perfect world, that's their plan, right? McKinnon late in the year takes on a larger role just as a running back. he's also a guy that has had a hard time staying on the field throughout his career. So I don't think you're penciling Jerick McKinnon in to carry the ball 10 times a game. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So it'll be Pacheco, and then McKinnon will be probably the most used of the other guys, but it's still not in that role. Like, who backs up Pacheco? That's what I want to know. Maybe it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and
I think
that's why he's back. Could be. But are we comfortable with that? Like, are you good with Clyde Edwards-Helaire being the guy to pick up first downs in the fourth quarter to put a team away? If the defense struggles, especially like it probably will, because it almost always does early in the year.
I think we have overall a skewed slightly impression of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And I think that he's a victim of his own circumstance a little bit. He's a victim of where he was drafted and the expectations being, I think, insanely high coming into that offense as a first-round draft pick, as a running back. I think that the expectation was, man, you plug him in alongside Mahomes and Kelsey, and keep in mind Tyreek Hill was on the team when he came in. Like, plug him into that offense, and he is going to be the best running back in the National Football League. And clearly it hasn't panned out that way, but it doesn't mean that he's not an effective running back. He's been banged up,
right,
as of late. And so I think that as a backup to Isaiah Pacheco, as somebody that can share carries with him, I do feel comfortable with that. I think that as long as you are adjusting the expectations appropriately on what he is and what his role is and what he's going to do, I think it's going to be okay.
And the reality is he's been a decent runner. He just hasn't been anything in the passing game, which is why we all liked him to begin with. So if he's just, I don't believe, and I would have to go back and dig up I think he's struggled in short yardage. I know he struggled at the goal line, so that's a little bit troubling, but I'm not sure they're ever going to just line it up and run the ball at the goal line anyway. So it's mostly just who's not going to fumble, who's going to move forward and help the offense pick up downs in the fourth quarter. The one thing that the Chiefs do have that most teams don't in that scenario is a quarterback in a passing game. Like, it might be 3rd and 1 and the game's on the line, and the Chiefs may be totally comfortable saying this is a passing down now, right? Because we have this offense designed this way. Now, that's a lot of trust on receivers to do that. But, I think they could do that. I think I guess if we power rank, is it more important that the Chiefs keep an extra back or find somebody, or keep Richie James? Like, I'm in on Richie James right now. Like, I think he's got a chance to be real handy this year.
Yeah.
I like him as a player. I thought that was a sneaky good signing. And I maybe I can warm up to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. 4 carries, 10 yards. One of those was for 7 yards. So you take that away, it's 3 carries for 3 yards. That's what I fear with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I mean, that's my biggest fear, is that he cannot pick up 2 and 3 yards when they have to have it late. Where Isaiah Pacheco, it's like you will have to cut his legs off for him not to get that 2 or 3 yards. Right. So that's, and that's where it was like, to me, when I would see guys like Zeke. Now, Zeke ended up getting a contract that was way too big. I would have never wanted that. But that's where it's like, yeah, Zeke doesn't have a lot of gas in the tank, but that dude never doesn't get 2 or 3 yards. Doesn't happen. So that's where I've thought maybe they've got a hole. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think, provides a nice backup in general. If you had to say, okay, Pacheco can't play, somebody's got to give us 15 carries in this game. Okay, I'm all right with that. I don't want that to be McKinnon until December, January. So, okay. But what about in a critical moment if it's not Pacheco in the fourth quarter? That's right. God, I wish they had just a little bit more juice back there.
Well, and I've always been, when I say always, I mean the last, couple of seasons or so, I've always been relatively nervous when you get to 3rd and short, or even 4th and short. I'd almost rather, with that offense and Patrick Mahomes, have 3rd and 10, or 4th and 8, as opposed to 3rd and 1. Because that team, ever since Mahomes got injured that one time on the quarterback sneak, they don't do it. They will not sneak it with Mahomes. It just does not happen. And I've never felt incredibly confident about any of their running backs, being able to get a couple of yards to convert on a 3rd and short or 4th and short. And that's why a lot of times you see them lining up in passing situations, on those short yardage 3rd and 4th down situations. So I don't think that has really changed from last year or the year before to now. But again, I think that we all feel most comfortable with it being Isaiah Pacheco, when he can, to be out there to convert. And then from there, I mean, honestly, like I'll go back to what I said at the very top of the segment. I don't think they go out and find anybody else. I would be shocked if the Chiefs go and try to sign another running back to compete for a roster spot. I think that they feel okay with who they have. I think it would be different if they weren't confident that they would have Pacheco in week 1, but it sounds like they think that they will. I think CEH can be a viable backup to Pacheco, and then McKinnon is a good change of pace. So I think that's who the Chiefs are going to run with, and then the way they're going to utilize them.
I think McKinnon's more than a change of pace. I think in a perfect world, McKinnon gets maybe there's a chance I think he gets the most run in the postseason. I think that's what happens with McKinnon, but you can't get there for a guy. Let me pull it up, who's had as many injuries over the years. I mean, McKinnon is awesome. Like, he is an awesome player, but he has had over his career a lot of injuries and a lot of availability issues. I'm looking back, and Minnesota, that he didn't play hardly at all in San Francisco. He had just 6 starts in the year. So and he never started for the Chiefs really last year. But I mean, if we think about like who was key to the Chiefs in the postseason, we're thinking about McKinnon, right? I think that's what they want to do again. I don't, but you got to be able to get him there. So, early in the year, I don't know what McKinnon's going to be. Probably just sort of a weapon. That's what I would do, because I want him late, right? And Pacheco's got to be the guy that you kind of always have, but we haven't seen him. He's wearing a yellow jersey at practice. They don't want him to get hit. And I get that. I would do that too. It's so until December, January, until ultimately I think you want to get to McKinnon, ramping up his role. Who's it going to be? And we'll see. Maybe it's Edwards-Helaire. It might be fine. And it might not matter. They may just say, forget it. We'll just throw the ball. We have 7 good receivers here that we trust. Let's line them up, spread it out, and see if you can stop us on the line with that many guys. And oh, by the way, Travis Kelce's still here. I did think it was interesting, by the way, in that first preseason game that we saw the Belldozer roll. And I wonder if that's something that they may. I've thought that, Tommy, I'm like, why don't they just use Blake Bell on 3rd and 1? Like, that was his thing for a long time.
They don't have a fullback anymore on the roster. So, I mean, they could easily utilize somebody like Blake Bell, or Blake Bell specifically.
Blake Bell is quarterback sneak guy. Like, they're not going to let Mahomes do that. They joked about that last week in camp. Mahomes is like, I don't think Andy's ever going to let me do it. But by the way, I've never been stopped, which was really funny. But why? Like, hey, defense, we got the Belldozer in. What are you going to do about it? Let's go. Let's just go 3rd and 1. Let's just go our guys on your guys. I bet you, Tommy, we see that some this year. All right, 869-1240. We'll look elsewhere around the NFL with the preseason's 2nd week in the books. Remember, there's only 3 preseason games right now. As we go out, let's give away some vouchers to the Wichita Wind Surge. There are, I think, 2 homestands left, so you can get vouchers. A pack of them. Pick which date works for you the best. Chad will get us that winner on the IHOP hotline, 869-1240. We'll come back. More Sports Daily right after this. All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily. This heat, Tommy. It's just making stuff not work, right? Like, it's just like everything. Doesn't matter what you are. Everyone's like, all right, I give up. Like, I'm out. Just, air conditioners, refrigerators, whatever it is. It's just like these stores. It's like everything in there's like, what the hell? And it's so humid. Good luck, everybody out there in the heat. Stay cool. Whew. All right, let's look around the NFL here just a bit, Tommy. What stands out? I thought the number one thing, honestly, that stood out to me more than anything else is like, why is Anthony Richardson not in that game for the Colts if you've named him your starter? To me, that was like the craziest thing of the whole preseason week. Like, where's Anthony Richardson? There's not a guy that's needed reps more than him that's ever been drafted. Like, the dude needs reps.
Yeah, I think that part of that is they want to make sure that he's 100% to start the season, right? Like, I think that I don't know, they maybe don't want to risk anything, but I get it. Like, I'm
don't
right
name
there
him the
with you.
starter.
Right. I'm right there with you because he is somebody that has so much potential to be the best rookie quarterback in the entire class. Like, I honestly, I think he's going to outplay Bryce Young this season. I think he's going to outplay CJ Stroud this season, but you've got to get him used to playing at NFL speed. And so I don't quite get that.
I'll take that bet. I don't think he's going to this year because I think he hasn't played enough quarterback. Now, his legs may bail him out enough, right? But remember, and look, I'm not like comparing him to Justin Fields. Justin Fields played a lot more college football, but right, similar profile. Justin Fields' legs finally bailed him out last year. He wasn't a very good passer, but his legs bailed him out. So I think you could see that perhaps with Richardson. But I don't think he's going to come in as, I believe I've read, the second worst accuracy-wise quarterback to be drafted in the first round since Jake Locker. I don't know that that's going to come in and immediately light the league on fire. Now, upside, I love Richardson. Like, his upside is tremendous. I think long-term, he could be the best quarterback out of the class. But I think in the short term, Bryce Young at least certainly is safer.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
Stroud hasn't looked amazing.
Yeah, I'm not going Stroud, and honestly, I'm not going Young either. I mean, I think Young, if he can adjust well enough, can be good, maybe long term. But I think he's going to struggle this year, like adapting to the NFL with that size, and the lack thereof. I mean, it's a different animal when you're playing behind linemen in the NFL than playing behind linemen in college. And I think that he's going to have a hard time with that. I don't think the Panthers are going to be any good this year. I think that they're going to be growing, and I think that they've got long-term a better future in front of them. But I think there's going to be growing pains this season. I know a lot of people are already penciling them in to win that wide open NFC South. I don't see it happening. No. And I don't think Bryce Young is going to be the best quarterback in the class, at least for the rookie year.
I mean, for right now, I'd put him fourth in that division. I think that, New Orleans is far safer with Derek Carr there. The Bucs are still very talented if they can get anything at quarterback. And then, you look at Atlanta, they've also got the young quarterback, but I think they've done a pretty good job accumulating talent in Atlanta. I don't think Carolina is there offensively yet, whether Bryce Young is good or not. And I don't know what good is for Bryce Young this year. I just think he's going to be able to step in and know how to make throws and do all those things because he's played more football and he's played it at the closest level too. Not that Richardson didn't in the SEC, but if you're going to want the closest thing to NFL, you play SEC football. So we'll see. Speaking of smaller guys in the adjustments to the line, Deuce Vaughn, again in the game, 5 carries, 14 yards, did have a really nice touchdown, but was stifled for the most part. Other than that, Deuce Vaughn's going to have a role on this team. I've been telling everybody this for a long time. Like, you can laugh, you can do everything you want. I've watched Jerry Jones be an owner for long enough. The Cowboys don't have anybody else, and they are screaming from the rooftops that they want to run the ball this year. They want to hide Dak. They want to complement that defense. They want to run the ball, and they don't have really anybody to do it. And look, I like the talent that they have in the back. I don't know anything about Dowdle, but Tony Pollard is not a 20 carry a game guy. And Dowdle probably will have a role. Deuce Vaughn's going to have a role on this team. They don't have anybody else.
And look, I think that the fact that he's gotten the play in the first 2 preseason games and shown out a little bit, I'm not sure that they need to go out and get another running back. And I think if you roll with Pollard and Vaughn, I think you'll be okay. I think you'll be all right.
There's nobody to go get now. They'll have, Ronald Jones will come back from his suspension and probably play more than any of us were like, why is Ronald Jones playing? But they don't. The opportunity for Deuce Vaughn, I said it when he got drafted, there could not have been a more perfect team for him to get drafted to. Not because his dad's a coach there or anything like that. One, because Jerry Jones is the owner. And Jerry Jones, if Deuce Vaughn gets early run and has success, it's going to be one of the number one stories in football because of his size. And we've never seen anybody at his size do it. Jerry Jones is going to love that. Love it. And we know he's talented enough to do it. It's really, can he hold up to the workload? I mean, that becomes the only question at his size. Can he take the beating that he's going to take at that position? He's going to have a role. He will touch the ball early and often in this season. He will. 869-1240 is the IHOP hotline. We'll come back. We'll continue to look around a little bit. Some other stories in the sports world as Sports Daily rolls on a Monday. 869-1240 is the IHOP hotline. We'll be back with more. Hour number 2 coming right up.
Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome back, everybody. It is Sports Daily. We're making our way through reactions to the preseason weekend storylines that stand out to us. It's such a difficult thing. Jacob Albracht here and Tommy Castor. Jad Chambers producing. We'll give away some HDOT and coffee here in just a little bit. Congratulations to our Win Surge winner in the last hour. It's a difficult thing, Tommy, because we want to start to take stock in things, but you just can't, right? You have just tiny bits and pieces of what might be for teams. So for instance, I am really growing on the Pittsburgh offense potentially. I liked Kenny Pickett coming out, thought he was the best quarterback in that class. I'm not sure there is a better collective group of pass catchers if Najee Harris is back healthy from whatever foot injury he was dealing with last year. Their line is a little better, certainly than it was in any of the previous years toward the end with Ben Roethlisberger. But, man, their receivers are talented with Pickens and Johnson and Calvin Austin now we're seeing. And they brought in Allen Robinson, and they have Najee Harris. And, is it Jalen Warren, the other running back that everybody sort of likes? They've got a better line. It's really sort of all on Pickett. I liked Pickett coming out. I think Pickett's going to be pretty good. I think he's got a chance to be a quarterback that plays for a long time and maybe makes some Pro Bowls, right? He's not in the class of these other great young quarterbacks, but I think he's a long-time starter in the NFL. I think Pittsburgh's got a chance to be good, but then you watch him in the preseason and it's okay, what are we going to get here? You're going to get 4 attempts from Pickett. He's 3 of 4 for 43 yards and a touchdown. It's that's good, I guess. And, so I don't, that's what makes it so hard for me. I just don't know how to evaluate this stuff. The storylines that I'm looking for going into a season have never been harder to get information on in the preseason than they are now. We just don't get the looks we need to get to try and hone in on these things we want to make proclamations about for the next season.
Well, the best thing about Pittsburgh is that Pickett has, he's going to get another year under his belt. And a lot of these or all of these offensive talents are going to get another year under their belts. Pickens is going to have another year. Najee Harris is going to have another year. Deontay Johnson is going to have another year. And on top of all of that, they're going to get another year of working under Mike Tomlin. And, the thing about Mike Tomlin, I don't know if there's a more consistent coach in the NFL year in and year out than Mike Tomlin and what he's able to get out of his teams. And so I think that just by virtue of that, yeah, you can start having conversations about, are they a playoff team in an incredibly difficult AFC North? And I think that they are. I'm not going to pick them to win the division, but it wouldn't shock me if they were a wild card team.
Right. No, it wouldn't shock me either, but it wouldn't shock me if they competed. I don't think look, if Burrow's healthy, you got to give the nod to Burrow. But it's teams like that. They're all over the place. Okay, let's try to evaluate the AFC West, right? What's the AFC West going to look like? Well, it starts with Denver. The big question's there. Russell Wilson gets 6 attempts. So how much are we really able to take from that? Javonte Williams is playing already. I think that's a takeaway that says, okay, Denver and, and their new coach Peyton has a really talented dual threat running back. That's dangerous if you're the rest of the league. We know that, they've lost some receivers, but they also, drafted Mims, and they have Judy, and Sutton by all accounts has looked great. And, what are we going to make out of Denver? Well, we just don't get enough time to try and guess. Like the days of like the way Andy Reid does it is not the way most teams do it anymore. We didn't see anything out of Justin Herbert, in the Chargers. Andy Reid's one of the few guys who will do it. And again, we talked about this last week. I'm not going to ever knock him for that because it works for him. And I think injury risk sometimes is inherent even at practice. That, I mean, it just doesn't bother me to do what Andy Reid does because I think it prepares his teams, and he's done it for so long. But
I do have to say I was a little bit nervous watching the Chiefs game in Arizona, knowing the field conditions, and they didn't look the field didn't look much better than it did.
So here's what
Andy
Reid talked about that. And he said, look, I know it's looked bad from what you've seen on camera, but it's not as bad by what we've been able to find out as it was in the Super Bowl. He said that before the game. Now, I don't know if he addressed it after the game. I haven't gone back through the quotes yet, but he fully acknowledged how bad it looked, but said it's playing better. Like it's gripping, it's tearing up, but it's gripping. And so, I mean, I don't know, but it does make you nervous, but it's okay. And then you've got, the Raiders, and look, like if Jimmy Garoppolo is healthy and does what Jimmy Garoppolo's always done when he's healthy, the Raiders could be better than they were a year ago for sure. So I don't know, but we don't get enough run. So if you're trying to stack the AFC West, we're not going to know anything until we get into the season. I mean, Sean Payton's playing guys because he's new, and I get, he's kind of old school too, so that doesn't surprise me. But this new preseason is so hard because used to, there was a blueprint, right? You got a possession in the first game. You got maybe a quarter in the second game, maybe a half in the third. You didn't play in the fourth. And that's basically what everybody did. Then when they took that game away, now you're just seeing teams nope, not going to play them. Not going to do it. You will not see my guys in the preseason. And then you got that 2-week stretch, and you have Andy Reid who sticks to the old model. And then you got other guys who kind of stick to the hybrid, and, maybe you'll get a series. I don't think we'll see anybody in the third preseason game, although we heard that the Jets, I think, are going to play Aaron Rodgers in the third preseason game. So it's
and it's also, by the way, they're not only just playing Aaron Rodgers. This will be the first preseason game that Aaron Rodgers has played in since 2019. I mean, it's been forever since we've seen Aaron Rodgers actually take the field in a preseason game. So it's really difficult to figure out the rhyme and reason behind who's going to be playing for what team in what preseason game. So you take what you can get, you assess it the best that you can. That you have to take it with a grain of salt. And I don't know, you just kind of enjoy the football's back, I guess, in some capacity without really being able to take a really solid and scientific stock of honestly anything.
There's no science to it. So now we're just guessing, right? We don't know. We're going to have to fly in blind with our predictions of things. And I think kind of all we can do now in the preseason is maybe look at it from a fantasy football perspective. And you see a lot of talk about who gets reps with the starters. And I do think that matters, but I don't think there's anything that's going to happen in the preseason that's going to give us a clue as to what to expect. So we fly blind now when we have to make predictions about the regular season. It's the hardest on the rookies, right? I think they take the brunt of it. What are they going to get? We didn't see Will Levis play. How do we not see Will Levis play? I mean, it's Anthony Richardson doesn't play. Levis doesn't play. You've got Stroud and Bryce Young playing. There's really no rhyme or reason to it. But if you're not going to play rookies, what's the point?
Well, and Stroud is getting more run than basically anybody else. I mean, he's played more in the first 2 preseason games, I think, than anybody else. As far as the rookie quarterbacks are concerned, I think he's played more than Bryce Young has, right?
Against
so
that's pretty good.
So, I don't know. I mean, I wonder if when it comes to like I mentioned it in the last hour with Anthony Richardson, we were talking about him. If the Colts just feel like the risks outweigh the benefits of having him play. And I don't know if I agree with that. I don't think I agree with that. I'm just trying to figure out what their rationale is. Like the risk of him getting injured and knowing that your backup is Gardner Minshew, as opposed to getting him out there and getting him reps. I think that's going to maybe come back to bite them the first couple of weeks of the season if they don't give him reps.
There's no
but
question.
I'm trying to figure out what their rationale is.
I don't know what their rationale is. I'm going to tell you right now, the Colts seem like they are a ticking time bomb, and this season's going to be an absolute disaster. That's what it seems like to me with the Colts right now. The Jonathan Taylor situation is weird. Like they've got maybe the most chaotic owner right now. So this organization that had just 25 years of stability between Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck. And it all sort of started when they screwed up Andrew Luck, like by never giving him a line. And like you ruined, has there been a better, maybe Joe Burrow? Like, has there been a better quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck? Probably Burrow, maybe Trevor Lawrence. Like that might be it. And you ruined that. You've got Jonathan Taylor, who's one of the most gifted running backs we've ever seen. You're ruining that currently. Now you draft Anthony Richardson, and it's like, okay, but you're not giving him a chance to develop, and you're going to just throw him to the Wolves. Number one, he shouldn't have been announced the starter from week one. You have Gardner Minshew there. Absolutely no need to make Anthony Richardson your starter yet. He's not. There is no way he has shown them enough, Tommy, to say, oh, you know what? He looks great. Like, put him in the preseason, tell him, hey, you cannot run. You just have to throw the ball. And if you don't have a play, throw it away. We just need you to get throwing reps only right now. Like it doesn't make any sense. Nothing they're doing makes any sense. And I think it's going to be a disaster for them this year. Like, I don't see any path to goodness for them because it just feels like that's going to go really, really poorly. And I hope they don't screw up another great quarterback prospect in Anthony Richardson like they did with Andrew Luck by never giving him offensive linemen and getting him hurt and retiring.
Well, remember, it's the same franchise that hired Jeff Saturday off the street to be their interim head coach last season. That being said, though, I do like Shane Steichen. And he was the architect, or one of the architects at least, behind a really high-powered offense in Philadelphia last season. So I like him. But you've got a rookie quarterback, you've got a rookie head coach, and really that should mean that Jonathan Taylor gets to be the star of the show for this season. He's not happy, right? And Jim Irsay has fanned that fire over the last month or so. So, Taylor's more than likely going to play, I think. But man, just the discord and the drama that's there before the season has already started with the rookie head coach who's kind of being thrown into the fire. And it by all accounts, a rookie quarterback that's going to be thrown into the fire. I think that Anthony Richardson, and I said this the last hour, I think he's got a higher ceiling, a higher potential than any other rookie quarterback in this class. And I think that if things come together, he'll be able to take the NFL by storm, I think, as far as being the best rookie quarterback in this class. But I'm kind of teetering on the edge because, to your point, it could very easily end up in disaster. Like, I think that the margin between greatness and disaster is very, very small for Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen in the first season.
I do too. They're just not getting anything right for a long time. And I like that hire just fine also. But you see stuff like that. And I think sometimes in this league, like when it seems that crazy, it probably is that crazy, right? It probably is that big of a mess. And that one to me stands out more than any of the others right now. Other places where that scenario could present itself, I think you could get that with a couple of I think you could get it with the Patriots, because last year was so weird. But, they did the things they bring in Bill O'Brien to just sort of say, all right, that was a huge mistake offensively. They probably are going to be better than anybody thinks. They're probably going to be one of the peskiest teams. Like the Patriots will probably be the hardest team to bet in football this year because hang around, right? And Mac Jones, I hope Mac Jones bounces back with O'Brien, by the way. But I think the trends and the signs there are relatively positive. So that was another team, like, for me, that had big questions. I still have it about the Browns, right? Like, I still think the Browns are one of those teams where everything could go wrong. And that depends on Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson has, like, if he's the same quarterback he used to be, Tommy, which I don't know how anybody can guess that, then they're probably going to be good, like pretty dang good. But if he's not, think about the weapons they have there. Like, they've done a night, like, that contract was so dumb. We've established that. But outside of that, they've really accumulated talent well, bringing in Elijah Moore. Nick Chubb is as good a running back as we have, like, in the modern era of NFL football. So you've got that. You got a pretty good line. You already had Amari Cooper there. They have some tight ends there. Like, they've got a pretty good group of, a talent there. But can't you see a path where everything goes sideways and the Browns are just a disaster? Like, there are teams like that, and nothing's happened with the Browns, by the way, in the like in the preseason, where I'm like, oh, here we go. I just don't know. I don't know. Anybody else be a ticking time bomb for you? Like, I don't think there's another one to me where I'm like, this could just be a massive disappointment. Or is there a flip side team? Like, I think the Packers have a chance to surprise everybody.
Well, I mean, going back to the Browns, you mentioned that, like, they could be good if Deshaun Watson gets back to where he was. But we saw Deshaun Watson in, small cases. I mean, the last few games of the year last year, we saw him come back and he was not good. And so unless there's been some kind of renaissance during the offseason, I'm not confident at all in saying that he's going to be able to get back to where he was when he was in Houston. So I'm not willing to bet on that. I'm not willing to bank on that. Maybe he surprises everybody, but I doubt that. It'd be different if we hadn't seen him yet, right? Like, if he was coming back and we hadn't seen him play in the handful of games that he did last season, then okay, like, sight unseen, the talent level that he possesses, maybe he can do it. But in the small sample size last season, in the final few games of the year, he didn't impress at all. And so I'm not confident enough to say that I think that the Browns can make any kind of noise in that division whatsoever, which may very well be the toughest division in the NFL, in the AFC North. You mentioned the Packers being a team that could surprise people. Yeah, I mean, I can see that. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Jordan Love. They've kind of kept him quiet and kept him hidden the first couple of years of his career behind Aaron Rodgers. And all eyes are going to be on him. Can he be the next franchise quarterback for the Packers? I don't know. I really don't. They like him. They're high on him. They wouldn't have, wanted to make him the heir apparent if they weren't. So we'll see. But I'm not willing at this point either in that division to say that I think they'll be able to make any noise.
That division's wide open. I like everything around. It's not, honestly, like the Packers and the Browns are similar. Like, everything else looks good. So what does the quarterback give you? Can't you see? And maybe this won't be true for the Packers, but like for the Browns, their range of outcomes to me seems like anywhere from 5 wins to like 12 wins. Like, all like that good or that bad seem like an option for them, because if Deshaun Watson doesn't play well, then it could just sort of spiral. I don't think the Packers are good enough to get that many wins with Jordan Love. But I do think the range of outcomes is, like, worst team in that division, or maybe they could sneaky contend in that division. Maybe. I know there are more people on the Bears, it seems like, than the Packers. I'm not there with that, because I think the Packers have done a pretty good job, with the roster, dealing with all the Aaron Rodgers stuff. We've been so laser focused on the Aaron Rodgers stuff. They got a pretty good group of players in Green Bay, and they've done a nice job of getting Jordan Love a collection of players to help him succeed. Well, again, we're not going to know any of it really until we get into the regular season. We just don't. And okay, so here's the other part of that. So let's say Jordan Love in the next game, and he threw it 8 times in the last game. Looked good, by the way, again this week. But let's say he came out and played the whole first half in the third game, And we'd say, okay, well, that's a pretty good look. But is the other team playing any of their defensive starters?
Right.
And Andy Reid talked about that a little bit too. He was like, it's sort of this balance when we play it. Like if our ones aren't getting run against ones or, good players, then we don't see a real big point in leaving them out there either. That's why he always says, like, I reserve the right to pull my guys back out. Like I'm telling you, I want to play them for a half. But if they're playing a cupcake squad, that doesn't do us much good anyway, and we'll just get them out of there. So it is sort of a balancing act. So again, like I don't know how we sit here and say, okay, yeah, oh, look at that. That tells us something right there. There are times where it can. Like I think Deuce Vaughn has told us something, right? Because that sort of translates no matter what, right? Like his wiggle that he's showing the ability to give, because we've seen that in practice, quite frankly. But with quarterbacks, like who are they playing against? Like, are we really going to try and scout these rookies? Like, did they play against ones? Did they play against fours? What are they doing there? And it makes it really difficult. So we're trying, but we'll give you what we can. We'll just be honest with you here on this show. Let's give away some tea and coffee, Jad. Maybe some iced coffee today from HTO would hit the spot. Wichita East HTO has the coffee drinks. West and East have the iced tea, of course. More than 25 flavors of the tea. Trying to help you stay cool today in just an absolutely absurd heat week here around the area. So let's do it for our first caller, 869-1240. We'll get you a free tea, free coffee from HTO on us here at Sports Daily. We'll come back. We'll shift to some other places in the sports world. Albracht and Castor will come right back. All right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily here on KFH. 869-1240 is that IHOP hotline. Glad to be here with you. Glad to be with you on our video stream as well. If you're tuning in that way on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitch, now available. Tommy also gets those links out on X or Twitter. You can find it that way too. Congratulations to Casey for winning our Win Surge vouchers. William for getting some iced tea and coffee from HTO. Wichita East and West coming soon in Derby. Glad to be here with you, everybody. Let's talk a little baseball, Tommy. Okay, a couple things for the Royals here. Cole Reagans bounces back with a nice start over the weekend. 6 innings, just 3 runs. Nice quality start there for Kansas City. Brady Singer did not have a great weekend. His first not quality start in a while. So continue to watch those two guys. I'll tell you selfishly here today, Tommy, Tucker Davidson, who's starting the game for Kansas City. Went to my alma mater, high school, same high school, back in,
cool.
not obviously very different ages, but Tascosa Rebel there out of Amarillo. So that's cool to see him with the Royals now. So always rooting for his success. It was, I think he was gone. He was going through right when I moved here. If I remember, there's been some other kids, I think, in his family that watch, but that's always cool when you see something like that. So that's really it for the Royals. Oh, and by the way, Bobby Witt Jr. continues to crush the baseball. So, I think to me, those have become the 3 big storylines: Witt, Cole Reagans, Brady Singer. That's what I'm paying the most attention to for this team. And hopefully we see Singer bounce back. And it was really good to see Cole Reagans bounce back with a nice start after not a bad start. In his last one, he gave up 3 runs in just 5 innings, but it sort of wasn't the same level as he had seen in the few prior. So he's been pretty consistent.
Yeah, they didn't have a great weekend in Chicago, but they get an opportunity now to go out to Oakland. And, we can talk all day long about how bad Oakland has been this year. Of course, they had that stretch where they played really good baseball for a period of time, but overall, it's not been good for the Athletics. It hasn't been good for the Royals either, let's be honest. But they've got an opportunity now, to go out to Oakland, this West Coast swing, and I think bounce back a little bit after not having a great weekend against the Cubs. But I read an article. I don't know if you saw this, and I don't even think I sent this to you. Read an article from the New York Post over the weekend that was talking about the Reds and what they were wanting to do at the trade deadline that they didn't end up getting done. They were really interested in Brady Singer, and that's according to John Heyman from the New York Post. And there were conversations about trying to get Brady Singer to Cincinnati. They were considering moving Jonathan India in that as part of that trade, moving him to Kansas City. Ultimately, it didn't happen. And I don't know if that was more about the Royals and their reluctance to move Brady Singer or what the situation was there. But if that has any credence, if the Royals were hesitant to move Brady Singer, they're seeing something in him. I know he didn't have a great weekend, but they're seeing something in him that, could mean that they think that he can be viable, long term. He's young, he's still under team control. So I think he's got that opportunity to do that.
I think that that's probably the smart decision for the Royals for a couple of reasons. One, what kind of control? Let me pull up his contract. Brady Singer.
They've got him, I think, for a while longer.
Yeah, he's about to hit arbitration, I think. So he would be similar to me in the reasons that I would not have traded or even remotely considered Bobby Witt Jr. I don't care what anybody brought. So yeah, Singer can't be a true free agent until 2027. So he's in his first year of arbitration now. He has 3 more years of control. Brady Singer has been really interesting because he's given us these flashes before, but the value on Singer to me won't change a ton whether they traded him his value is not going to go down, I don't think, but boy, it could go up, right? And so if you want to go down that road, there's no urgency to go down that road yet. With 3 years of control, he's going to have almost equivalent value, I think, if he has 2 years of control, right? Or like if you considered it in this offseason, like if the Reds came back in the offseason, see that Brady Singer finishes the year strong, and they're like, listen, we really like him, Kansas City, and we're in our window now. And if you're the Royals, you say, okay, well, we're gonna need a little bit more back. And then you can think about it, right? And then you can consider it. I don't think there's a way. Here's the problem with Brady Singer, Tommy. Like, there's no world where if he does continue to pitch well, that they'll be able to bring him back as a free agent. Not going to happen, right? And he's not good enough for long enough yet to sort of make the kind of offer to Bobby Witt Jr. that they need to make to try and buy out a couple of free agency years with the deal now. You wouldn't do that with Singer. Like, you're not giving him what would become like a 5-year contract offer right now. At least I wouldn't do that. So he's sort of in this purgatory, right? Like you like him, you want to continue to see him to develop, but he's almost certainly getting traded at some point because I don't think any of us see the Royals window happening in the next couple of years. But to not trade him at this past deadline makes sense to me because I think that's the floor of his trade value. And I think the ceiling of his trade value is much, much higher.
I definitely understand that. And I think that that's ultimately why the Royals didn't move him at this deadline. It is interesting to me, though, that there was at least one team that checked in on him, even knowing that, outside of a stretch here this season, it hasn't been roses for Brady Singer. And so the fact that, teams are understanding, or at least the Reds are just one team, maybe there were more, but the fact that there are teams out there that are understanding what his value could be, that's really how I think that, when it comes to trades with the Royals right now, that teams, the way they have to look at players on this organization, outside of Bobby Witt Jr., who is a superstar, you almost have to look at players as what they could be in your system versus what they're currently doing with that franchise. I mean, that's why I think Scott Barlow was a hot name on the market, because teams saw his raw ability and thought, okay, well, we can actually make him, into something really good. Same thing with, I know that Carlos Hernandez got a few looks at the trade deadline. That's really how teams are assessing, players from the Royals when they're interested in acquiring them. So I think that, once that ends up happening, and I would love to think that Brady Singer can continue to grow in that value to where before he walks away as a free agent, the Royals can move him and get value in return. I hope that it transitions away from what teams see that he could be in their system and more as far as like what he's actually doing, if that makes sense.
It does. But I also think other teams have seen the upside in him that we've seen in stretches, in spurts, their last 2 or 3 years too. So yeah, if I'm a team, I'm going to Brady said, hey, Royals, listen, I know it's been tough with Brady Singer. We'll take him off your hands. Like, because
Right.
other teams are going to see the upside there and the controllable. You still got so much control on his deal. But the Royals see that too. And while I ultimately, again, he's going to get traded, I think, because the Royals aren't in a position yet to be bidders on big-time free agent pitchers, which he could be by the market, right? The market could make him one. Like if he gets to the point where we can keep his ERA around 4 and just log the innings that we know he's capable of logging, and it can be a mid to back end of the rotation guy, he's going to command a pretty big contract on the open market. So the Royals aren't going to be in that business anyway, I don't think, at that point. They'll need to trade him at some point. It just doesn't make any sense to me to do it now. And it goes back to the whole, like all the way back when people are like, just tear it down and start over. Like that doesn't make sense to do that. There is nobody else to come up. It's the same problem we had last year when it was like, oh, bring up all the young players, right? And it's like, guys, like I know that you don't want to see Andrew Benintendi, but he's better than the outfielders they have in the minor league. Like I'm sorry that Carlos Santana isn't the great, but he's better than and more equipped to handle the big leagues than you brought up a AAA roster. And this is what you get. So now what do you want to do? You want to bring up a AA roster? You want to get rid of these guys and bring, like, if there's no value to get a return on a trade, don't make the trade. You don't just trade guys for nothing. That doesn't make any sense, especially when they're controllable assets. Scott Barlow's different story. Dude's not going to be here for a while. Like, he's going to be a free agent and be gone. But when you got young control, like, why would you trade those? Send them down. If you don't want them at the big league level, send them down to the minor leagues. But you don't have any value in trading Nick Pratto right now. Like, doesn't make any sense. You don't have any value in trading, Daniel Lynch right now. Like, why would you do that? There's no sense in doing it. If you're not getting anything in return, don't do it just to do it. So, bloggers feel better about things. Like, you have to ride the ship to some degree.
But that's where the conflict has always been. And that's where the Royals have always been caught between a rock and a hard place, at least in this current iteration of a rebuild. Because if they're not ready to play at the big league level and they're not producing at the big league level, you hear the fans saying, blow it all up and move them all out of town. But then the rational thing to do, to your point, is to move them down back to the minors, but they're not really developing the way that they should be in the minors, because they haven't had a good minor league system at all to develop these players into being big league ready. So you move them down, they languish in the minors. You move them up before they're ready because you don't feel confidence in the current guys you have on the roster. So you're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. It's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. They're not getting the development they need in the minors, but they're not yet ready to go to the big leagues. So what do? And that's been the conundrum.
Trading them for nothing
with the Royals. I'm not suggesting that that's the right thing to do at all. I'm just saying there's not a good answer, right? There's not one that comes up and slaps you in the face and this is the way to do it. Outside of Bobby Witt Jr., Vinny Pasquantino, that's basically it.
I mean, the answer is either those guys come up, take their lumps, and you win 45 games,
right?
Or you supplement it with short-term free agents that you hope can put a decent product on the field and get you trade return value at that year's deadline. They've picked the wrong players, Tommy, but the philosophy has been the right one. The problem is they can't ever pick the right players to bring back in return or draft. And so that's what's extending this. The roadmap to do it, I think, has been the right one. Try to evaluate affordable free agents, bring them in, hope that they're successful, and trade them. Not bring up your young players and trade them because they're not good enough yet at the big league level. Maybe they're never good enough at the big league level. That still doesn't mean you trade them for nothing, which is what their trade value is right now. That's what drives me nuts about factions of the Royals fan base right now is there's this like, well, just get rid of them. And I'm like, what are you going to replace them with? These are the guys that the get rid of them crowd last year. This is what you got from that. So you think it's just going to get better? if you get rid of these guys, because the better players aren't there. And that goes back to what we talked about last week. 0 on top 50 prospect lists, like pretty universal. I don't know when the last time that I saw a current Royals prospect inside the top 50. The reality is, if, Melendez or Prado or any of these young guys, like if those guys were in the minor leagues, maybe they would be there. They're not ready for this. And it also goes to, like, some people are comfortable with the infield the way it looks right now. And I'm like, no, it's not very good. Like, I hope Vinny Pasquantino is good. I hope. We sure haven't seen very much yet. We saw, how many good half seasons did Hunter Dozier have over the years, Tommy? Like, we've seen players, like, it's far from, we can lock Bobby Witt Jr. in, like, lock it in, superstar. We can't do that yet with Pasquantino. I hope we can, but he hasn't shown us enough to say, yep, that we're good at first base for the next 15 years. Really? You that confident in that? Like, the biggest problem is patience is the only thing you can have right now. I hope that Piccolo is a good evaluator in the offseason of affordable free agents. And I hope that he can identify and bring some of those guys in, because that's the only path to both winning any games in the short term and reloading the farm system. That's it. Like, that's the only way to do it. Trading your young players for nothing is not going to retool the farm system. It's not going to, unless you get a dumb trade partner, but nobody's going to trade that. They just won't.
He's got to be a good evaluator this offseason, or his tenure as general manager is going to be a short one in Kansas
Very
City.
short. Yeah.
Very short. He's got to evaluate this offseason. It's critical because even though you want to make sure you've got the right players long-term for this franchise, you've got to do something to supplement the lack of talent right now and at least show tangible growth into next season. So, you mentioned that evaluation. That's got to be a successful one this offseason.
We'll see. 869-1240 is the number to call. We'll come back. More Sports Daily right after this. Welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily on KFH. Jake Albracht, Tommy Castor with you. So I guess golf was crazy, Tommy, this weekend on the PGA Tour. Like, I don't even know where we're at. Like, I'm out of golf mode now. So, but I heard like just nuts, like a crazy ending, right?
Yeah, I thought you would never ask. It was a big final round yesterday with the BMW Championship. Victor Hovland shot a course record and came from behind and won the BMW Championship. We're in this part of the season where it's the race to the FedEx Cup now, where they're each week chopping down the list of players that can continue on. And so this coming weekend, the Tour Championship, it's the final leg of the playoffs. The top 30 golfers remain. And so you've got guys like Scotty Scheffler in the mix and John Rahm in the mix and, others that are up there and ready to go for this weekend. But yeah, it was a crazy final round, and it was definitely fun to watch.
And here's my problem. Like, the idea of the FedEx thing is everything I love about sports, right? Like, it's everything I love. The playoff, all of it. I love everything about it. But I've never totally been into it. And I don't know what would draw me in. Probably if it was at a different time. Because at this point, I just turn the page. Like, one, the baseball team that I follow is, chasing a World Series. First time in a while that's happened. So it's going to be hard to pull me away from that. And then there's football. I just can't get it into the power ranking. And I wonder, and mid-season tournaments never make any sense, right? But in golf, maybe it could. Like, what if you had this finish out in at the beginning of August, and then it doesn't mean you can't play the other tournaments, right? Because then they're just like tournaments that happen all the rest of the time of the year. Or maybe you reset maybe you can reset the FedEx calendar and you play it out and you're finishing in that first week of August. And then whatever tournaments remain just kind of starts the points acquisition for the next year or something.
Well, that's kind of how it works now. I mean, but it does, shift a little bit later where this coming weekend is the final week and then it starts over. There's like 1 week off and then they get right back into it for next season, already. So that's kind of the way that it works now. But I mean, I'm kind of with you, although, for me, I watched baseball yesterday, but I also watched golf. I mean, preseason football, it's there, but it's not really there. Once you get into the start of the regular season for NFL and college football, it becomes more difficult. But you know what? Over. You get after this weekend, then you get into Ryder Cup season, and that's the big thing too.
I like the Ryder Cup.
Who's going to be a part of the Ryder Cup squad? So we're very quickly getting into that stage also.
I like the Ryder Cup. I'm in on the Ryder Cup. For whatever reason, which I love the idea of the FedEx Cup. I just can't do it. And maybe it's because I'm not good enough at golf that when I watch it, I'm like, I like the majors. I like to keep up with it. I love watching it as in the background. I enjoy thoroughly watching it. It's just the keeping up with the actual season of it gets interesting to me. And we'll see. We'll check in. So they have one more event, right? You've got one more and that determines the winner.
Yeah, the Tour Championship. And so you've got the winner of the actual tournament Tour Championship, but that could be different than the person who actually wins the FedEx Cup based on the overall year-long points. So that there's kind of a couple different storylines.
It's like NASCAR.
Pretty much. I mean, it kind of is the season-long points race comes down to this weekend with the Tour Championship. Only the top 30 golfers. Jordan Spieth, I believe, made it right on the number. He was number 30.
Make it?
Right on the number,
okay.
I'm pretty sure, as number 30. And so that becomes this last weekend's tournament. That was fun too. You were trying to figure out who's going to win the tournament, and it was Victor Hovland. But then you're also trying to see who's going to be in the top 30 to move on to the next week and who's going to be eliminated.
So in that scenario, though, so does Spieth have any chance to actually win it?
So the way that the Tour Championship is set up is that the number one ranked player, I believe that's Scotty Scheffler, starts the tournament at 10 under par. Okay. And then it goes down from there, 10 under, 9 under, 8 under, all the way to, so Jordan Spieth will start at even. So he'll be 10 shots behind to start the tournament this weekend. So, I mean, that becomes awesome. A little bit more of a challenge. Yeah.
That's the right way to do it. Cause you want to have those guys with the chance. Yeah. Look, I'll lean on you for updates there. I'm in. Okay. Who's going to win it? Wait, let me ask you this. Who won it last year?
God, I think Scotty Scheffler won it
That's
last
the
year, I'm
problem
pretty
golf
sure.
has with this thing, because there's not enough fanfare about the champion. So that's where, and I only asked that because I have no idea. Like I would guess Scotty Scheffler.
Rory McIlroy won the FedEx
See?
Cup last year, so I'm
That's
mistaken.
and that's I think where that's the one thing they've got to do a little bit better job of with it, because most years, like, you could rattle, and I can't because I don't watch it at all, but you could rattle off the NASCAR champion, right? Like the points winners in those years. Golf's got to get to the point where that's a more celebrated win.
Yeah, the majors are the celebrate. Like, you can list off who wins the majors. But like having the year-long race thing, like, you got to be able to, know who that is year in and year out.
That we need to be like seeing that on everything we're watching. Like beef that up a little bit. I think that would help them in the endeavor too. But I'm in. Maybe I'll try and check that out this weekend. All right, 869-1240. We'll come back. We'll wrap this thing up. Tell you what's on tap for the network today as Sports Daily rolls. It's a Monday. It's a hot Monday. Good luck, everybody.
Electric's hand-picked team of licensed, certified, and background-checked electricians love what they do every day. For them, it's not a job. It's passion for getting out every day and fixing homeowners' electrical problems. Doing electrical work right the first time and knowing that they have the power to make things better for you and your family. That's Mr. Electric.
We're Mr. Electric. We have the power to make things better.
Schedule an on-time appointment by visiting MrElectricWichita.com.
Patterson Legal is the way to go. Call 550-0000.
In a wreck, need a check? I'm attorney Tyler Patterson, and you only need to make one call. That's all. If you've been injured, we can help you get the compensation you deserve. We were just voted the best law firm in Wichita, and we've recovered hundreds of millions of dollars for thousands of Kansans just like you. Call Patterson Legal Group today for a free consult.
Patterson Legal is the way to go. Call 550-0000.
Jim Gaffigan here with some more Straight Talk. Let's take a moment to appreciate our sweet children, loving grandparents, and eternal soulmates. Now let's use them to save money on wireless. Because with the Straight Talk Silver Plan, you get 4 lines for just $25 a month with unlimited data and no contracts. So add those human pawns, loved ones, and save money. Thanks, kids. They're finally worth it. Straight Talk Wireless, available at Walmart.
Get 4 lines on Silver Unlimited for $25 per line per month, plus taxes and fees. For data management practices and additional terms, visit straighttalk.com.
Keep your water heater heating. Stop your faucet from leaking. Just call up the pros at David Lease Plumbing.
David Lease Plumbing has an open position for an experienced service plumber. If you or a plumber you know is looking for a plumbing career with competitive industry pay and benefits, please give us a call at 945-0117. We take care of our customers' needs while maintaining a positive working environment for our employees.
Let David Lease Plumbing give your plumbing a new lease on life.
For over 36 years, Truck Stuff has been the premier destination for upgrading with aftermarket accessories and customizing your truck, Jeep, van, SUV, and professional fleet vehicles. If you love all things trucks or off-road like we do, we could use you on our team. We're looking to add a salesperson and an installer to be able to keep up with customer demand. We love Wichita. We're so grateful that you shop with us at our locally owned and operated small business. Join our family business and submit your application today at truckstuffks.com.
Tricked out, decked out, check us out. Truck Stuff.
Ready Overhead Doors, Wichita's home for LiftMaster garage door products. If you haven't upgraded your garage door opener in the last 10 years, you're missing out on modern features that add convenience and security. Ready's LiftMaster smart openers offer ultra-quiet belt drives, battery backups, 360-degree LED lighting, built-in security cameras, automatic locks, and more. LiftMaster's MyQ openers allow you to control your door with your smartphone. Open your door from anywhere and get real-time notifications when the door is activated. If it's time for a garage door upgrade, don't worry, call Ready.
Call 491-5111, call Ready.
Ready Overhead Door installs automatic sunshades and retractable awnings for homes and businesses. Reduce energy expenses and improve comfort in hot rooms, decks, and patios. Call to schedule a free estimate today.
That's 491-5111, call Ready. Call Ready.
The KFH Studios, powered by Devon James Injury Lawyers. Call 888-8888. That's 888-8888.
Minor League Baseball, super hot day on an afternoon game at Riverfront Stadium for the Wichita Wind Surge. No problem for the first place Surge, a 12-1 win over the Springfield Cardinals. Wichita won 5 out of the 6 games in the home series. Back-to-back-to-back series wins for Wichita for the first time on the season. Wichita's won 7 of its last 8 games, and the winning pitcher on the mound, Pearson Ohl, with another great job. He gave up a home run on the first pitch of the game, and then hardly anything else after that. Went 5 innings, only gave up the 1 run for his 6th win of the season. 2,100 fans at the game yesterday at Riverfront Stadium. Pearson Ohl on the month of August, 4-0 with a 1.4 earned run average, as he got another win yesterday. An off day today for the first place Surge, a travel day, getting ready for a week on the road. Wichita is in first place, a half-game lead atop the division with 24 games to go in the regular season. I'm Ted, the Sports Head. Major League Baseball, the long road swing continues for the Kansas City Royals, now heading out to the West Coast for a matchup with Oakland. The Royals and the Athletics, Monday night at 8:30, right here on 97.5 and 1240 KFH. Royals Baseball on KFH, brought to you in part by South Central Kansas Problem Gambling Task Force and Baxter & Associates.
Wichita's most listened to sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, that's going to do it for us today on this Monday, a regular day of programming. Jim Rome follows us at 11, Bob and Jeff at 2, Maggie and Perloff at 4 for an hour, then Zach Gelb at 5, and then the Royals out on the West Coast. Late baseball tonight, 8:30 p.m. You can hear all the action right here on KFH. Hope you have a great Monday. Stay cool out there today. It's going to be another hot one, another brutally hot one today, so stay cool. We'll see you back here tomorrow for a Tuesday edition of Sports Daily. For Chad Chambers, for Jacob Albracht, I'm Tommy Castor. We'll see you then.